My dear respected brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this worldly life in direct contrast with what we are to expect in the akhirah. Our aim and goal in this life is to, inshaAllah ta'ala, in akhirah be in Jannah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all our firdaus. In Jannah, the situation will be such that everything will continuously be improving. Every situation, circumstance you go through then, when you see it happening again, it will be better than next time. Every time you look at your spouse in Jannah, next time you look, they will be even more beautiful. Every food you taste in Jannah, when you come back to it again, it will be even tastier. Everything in Jannah we experience will be getting better and better. But in this world, it seems like things are always getting worse and worse. And that is the nature of dunya. It is the lowest thing. That is what dunya means. And because of that, because of the situations that arise in this world, and here that is not the case. It is not always better than last time. Sometimes you may have had an experience in a certain place with someone, next time it's even worse. And it can get worse and worse and worse. There's no limit. Sometimes we go through a situation, a circumstance in our life that seems like this was the hardest thing that could have happened to me. But just a few weeks or months or years later, something else happens that's even worse. That is how this world works. That is the nature of this world. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses many different methods to convey the messages. In many cases, there are direct commands. Do this, don't do this. In many cases, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses examples. The examples of these people is like this, or this is like this, to help us understand better with things that we can relate to. The most common method used by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran is of telling stories of the past prophets. And one common theme you will find with every single story is that that prophet went through some difficulty. They faced situations which sometimes for them, even they felt like, how am I going to get out of this? And every prophet that came, that Allah tells us in the Quran, each had different sets of circumstances. Right from Adam al-Salaam, who faced the temptation of a physical desire of eating something, to Nuh al-Salaam, who faced a social boycott and the extreme disregard of his nation for almost 1,000 years, to Lut alayhi salam, who faced the extreme indecency of his people, to Yaqub alayhi salam and Yusuf alayhi salam, who both faced the deception and treachery of their own family members. And it goes on and on, all the way up to our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And he says that Inna ashadda an-nasi bala'an al-anbiya. The people from the creation of Allah to undergo the most difficulties are the prophets. And he says, وَلَقَدْ أُوذِيتُ فِي اللَّهِ وَمَا يُؤْذَى أَحَدٍ. That I myself have gone through more situations than any other of the prophets have together. But the point in telling us all of these stories and events that took place is not just for the sake of some entertainment, but among the many lessons that we take from those is that when we face similar situations in our own lives, how are we supposed to react? How did those prophets of Allah react? And how did they get through those difficult times? When we look at them, we find that every single prophet did the same thing. Right when that happened, they turned back to Allah. And you find their du'as mentioned in the Quran. Rabbi inni maghlubun fantasir. Rabbi inni lama anzalta ilayya min khairin faqir. And it goes on and on and on. Even our Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the worst day of his life, and he tells us that this was the worst day of his life in Taif, right after, what did he do? He made dua, Allahumma inni ashku ilayka du'fa quwwati. So our mandate is then that when we face difficulties in our life, at any level, it could be something in our family that happens, it could be something permanent, something temporary, the loss of someone loved, or a situation, a financial hardship, a difficult situation you are in at work, in your business, out in society. It could be events that affect society as a whole, like the wildfires we're having right now, or floods that are going on in many places in the world. When we see any of these, our attention should turn directly back to Allah. When Yaqub alayhi salam, when he lost each of his sons, first Yusuf alayhi salam and then Binyamin, both times he made the statement, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ, that I'm going to practice a splendid patience, a beautiful patience. And Mufassirin mentioned that the fact that the sabr, the patience over there, is qualified with Jameel, it means there is a patience which is not Jameel as well. And they explained that the sabr, Jameel, is that a person, first, Imam Razi mentions it this way, he says that first a person must recognize who is the one who brought this situation. That Allah is the one who brought this. And they must recognize, second, that the one who brought it is the one who is able to take me out of it. Imam Ibn Kathir rahimahullah, he mentioned that the first thing is that a person should not lose their composure. And secondly, they should not tell others about it. And Sufyan al-Thawri mentions the same thing, that the first thing in Sabr and Jameel is when you are hit with a certain situation, don't go complaining to people about it. They don't have the means to help you. Trying to get their pity and their attention will not help you in any way. If anything, sometimes too many people knowing about your difficulty makes it worse, because they end up talking to you about it and remind you of it. But instead, as Yaqub alayhi salam said, إِنَّمَا أَشْكُو بَثِّي وَحُزْنِي إِلَى اللَّهِ, that I turn all of my grief back to Allah. It is okay to be sad when something happens. That's a natural instinct. You can't fight that. Even Yaqub alayhi salam would say, Ya asafa ala Yusuf. And when the son of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam passed away, he expressed words of sadness. Inna alayka ya Ibrahim lamahzunun, that we are sad that you have left us. But the issue comes in when we start to complain about it to others. That, you know what happened to me? Can you believe it? This person did this, or I went here and that happened. What Yaqub alayhi salam said, إِنَّمَا أَشْكُ بَثِّي وَحُزْنِ, Bath and huzn, they both mean grief. But Mufassirin mentioned that huzn is that grief that you have inside of you. And bath is once you spread out that grief amongst others. So he said both, that which I harbor inside and that which I would normally express outwards, I'm taking that only to Allah. When Aisha radiallahu anha, when she went through the incident of al-ifk, and a large portion of society had turned against her, others had stopped talking to her to find out, let's see what happens. She at the end made a statement. She said that, and she was addressing her parents and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the time. She said that if I was to tell you I am innocent, وَلَئِن قُلْتُ لَكُمْ إِنِّي لَبَرِيئَةٌ وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ إِنِّي لَبَرِيئَةٌ, and Allah knows I'm innocent. لا تصدقوني, you will not believe me. وَلَئِنِ اعْتَرَفْتُ لَكُمْ بِأَمْرٍ. But if I admit that I did something, وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ إِنِّي لَبَرِيئًا, Allah knows I am innocent still, you would believe me. And then she said, وَاللَّهِ لَا أَجِدُ لِي وَلَكُمْ مَثَلًا إِلَّا أَبَا يُوسُف. I don't find any other example or anything other suitable for me to say right now, except as the father of Yusuf, Yaqub alayhi salam, said. And she said, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ وَاللَّهُ الْمُسْتَعَانُ عَلَى مَا تَصِفُونَ. I will exert that same patience, and Allah is the one who is able to help me against what everyone is doing. So this must always be our first action. It is not an easy one to implement. It is against human nature sometimes. But we try to, when something happens, yes, there are some people who need to know at times. But telling people just for the sake of complaining, there's no benefit in that, there is no use in that. And we are strongly discouraged against that. We turn back to Allah and we maintain hope. Yaqub alayhi salam told his sons, وَلَا تَيْأَسُوا مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ إِنَّهُ لَا يَيْأَسُوا مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. That go and look for Yusuf and his brother and don't lose hope in Allah. Because only those who don't believe in Allah are able to lose hope in Allah. Imam Razi rahimahullah, he explains that. Why is that? Why is losing hope so strongly connected to kufr? He says that when a person is losing hope, they could have one of a few ideas going on in their mind. One is that Allah does not know what I'm going through. Allah is unaware of what is happening to me. Or they could have the thought that Allah is not able to help me in this situation. Or they can have the thought that Allah knows about my situation, He's able to help me, but He is too miserly to help me. Na'udhu billah. It could be any of these three or anything along these lines. Because that's when you lose hope. When you think there's nothing else, no one else that can help me now. But if we can maintain that hope, knowing that Allah is the one who brought me in this, He alone is the one who will take me out. And a large part of being able to do that is to recognize those situations as a test. Allah has said very clearly, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ, we will test you مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ, in all types of different sectors of your life. But then وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, that the glad tidings for those who are patient at that time. Who are those? الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. When they face that calamity, they say, إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. For some reason, we have restricted just this phrase only to when someone passes away. That is not the case. Allah mentioned it here in the context of any difficulty, any calamity you go through. Because what are we saying in there? Inna lillahi. The first statement we're saying, we belong to Allah. That statement itself, it includes the entire idea that this situation came from Allah. Allah is the one able to take me out of it, and I am turning only to Allah in this. That is why we say that. And it should be a practice that we say whenever we go through any difficult situation. And we say it knowing what we are saying. Not just as a custom. That we're supposed to say this now. Okay, if someone posted in a message, someone passed away, let's all copy and paste and put the same message in. That's not the point of it. So, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to make this change in our life. Our nature, like I said, it's opposed to that. But to move from that over to this side, where we are turning only to Allah, that is the ultimate goal. And in these being tests, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course He is the all-wise, and He knows what we are going through, why we are going through it. But in that there is always good for us as well. And there are countless ahadith that talk about different types of good that come out of these. But just for one example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when Allah wants a certain level for a person, a certain status in akhirah, فَمَا يَبْلُغُهَا بِعَمَلِهِ, a person can't get there through their actions. Either they're deficient in their a'mal, and they don't have enough good deeds to deserve that status in the akhirah, or they do a lot of good in this life, but Allah wants to give them even more. فَمَا يَزَالُ اللَّهُ يَبْتَلِيهِ بِمَا يَكْرَهُ حَتَّى يَبْلُغَهَا. Allah keeps putting this person in situations that they hate until they reach that level. Because the entire time a person is in a difficult situation, whether it be physical or mental, whether it be stress or anxiety, they are getting rewards, their sins are being forgiven, and their status in akhirah is being elevated. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the ability and make this easy for us to practice in our lives. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.